The Montana sky was a blanket of steel gray, heavy with the threat of rain. She gripped her daughter's small hand tightly as they trudged through the muddy path toward the outskirts of the ranch. Their shoes were soaked, their clothes clinging to them, and her hair plastered to her face. The storm had come suddenly, leaving her no time to prepare. Her tiny cabin by the river had been swallowed by the swelling waters, and now, with the wind whipping against her, she had nowhere else to turn. Her daughter, barely 7, whimpered softly, hiding her face against her mother's shoulder. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, trying to sound braver than she felt. "We'll find shelter." The barn loomed ahead, its wooden walls battered by years of wind and sun but sturdy, a refuge against the raging storm. She hesitated at the large sliding doors, unsure if anyone was inside. But the rain was coming faster now, splattering across her face, and there was no choice. With a deep breath, she pushed the doors open. The barn smelled of hay and horses, dry wood mixed with the faint scent of leather tack. She blinked in surprise at the dim interior, barely lit by the streaks of gray light filtering through the cracks in the roof. She tried to calm her daughter, who was shivering despite her coat, and they found a corner piled high with fresh hay to settle on. Just as she was spreading their thin blanket over them, the sound of heavy boots on the wooden floor made her freeze. Her heart thumped in her chest. Then a tall figure appeared at the doorway, shadowed by the dim light but unmistakably imposing. He was a rancher, clearly wealthy by the quality of his coat and the polished boots, yet there was a gentleness in the way he held himself. His hat was in his hands, and his eyes, sharp but not unkind, studied them carefully. "You shouldn't be out in this," he said softly. His voice was calm, steady, like the slow flow of a river. "Come inside. You can stay as long as you need." She blinked, caught between fear and relief. Strangers in this town didn't often offer help, especially to a woman with a child. Yet here he was, standing with no judgment, only kindness. Her daughter peeked up, eyes wide, and he smiled gently at her, kneeling slightly to meet her gaze. "Don't worry," he whispered, reaching into his coat pocket to pull out a small lantern. "It'll be warm in here." The soft glow of the lantern filled the barn, chasing shadows from the corners, and for the first time since the storm began, she felt a flicker of hope. As the wind rattled the barn doors, she realized that this unexpected sanctuary might be exactly what they needed, not just a shelter from the storm outside, but a moment of peace in a world that had suddenly become so uncertain. The storm had passed, leaving a wet, glistening world outside the barn, but inside, warmth lingered. She had never imagined a barn could feel like home, yet the rancher's quiet presence made it so. He had returned early in the morning with firewood, blankets, and hot porridge, setting everything down without fuss, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She watched her daughter tuck into the food with an eager appetite, her small hands clumsily grasping the bowl, and couldn't help but smile despite the exhaustion etched across her face. The rancher didn't hover or demand attention. He moved around the barn with quiet efficiency, repairing a loose plank, feeding the horses, and stacking hay. Occasionally, he glanced their way, offering small gestures of reassurance, a nod, a gentle smile. His presence was steady, grounding, and she found herself relaxing for the first time in days. It was strange, the way trust could grow in the midst of hardship, but she realized it was happening. Slowly, carefully, she began to let her guard down. Her daughter discovered the barn cats first. 2 scruffy, gray kittens had made a corner their home, and laughter, pure and unguarded, bubbled from the little girl as she chased them among the hay bales. The rancher paused, leaning against a post, watching them with a soft expression. She noticed then how he moved around the barn, not as a master of it, but as someone who cared for it deeply, who respected every living thing within it. As the day wore on, she found herself talking more, telling him about their life before the storm, about the little cabin by the river, and about how the flood had swept it all away. He listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, asking gentle questions that showed he cared. There was no judgment, no pity, just steady, patient attention. It was something she hadn't felt in a long time, and it stirred emotions she wasn't yet ready to name. By evening, the barn was bathed in the soft glow of lantern light. She sat on a bale of hay, her daughter curled beside her, and they shared stories with him in low tones. Sometimes he chuckled, sometimes he offered quiet advice, and sometimes he simply listened. That simple act of being present, of giving without asking for anything in return, created a fragile but undeniable bond. When the mother finally tucked her daughter into the hay for the night, the rancher stayed nearby, sitting on a stool with his hands folded, watching over them. "You're safe here," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. She felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire, gratitude, relief, and perhaps something more, something unspoken. As she drifted into sleep with her daughter's head resting against her shoulder, she realized the barn was more than just a shelter from storms. It had become a place of hope, a place where trust and kindness could grow, and where, maybe, a new beginning could take root in the quiet Montana night. Winter had settled over the Montana ranch, blanketing the fields in crisp white snow. The barn, once just a refuge from the storm, now felt like a home filled with warmth and quiet laughter. Morning sunlight filtered through the cracks in the roof, falling across the hay-strewn floor where her daughter played with the kittens, her cheeks flushed from excitement and the cold outside. She watched from her spot near the lantern, a cup of steaming tea in her hands, feeling an unfamiliar but comforting sense of stability. The rancher had been a constant presence through it all. Each day he worked the land and cared for the animals, but he always found small moments to check in on them. He would bring fresh blankets, warm meals, or sometimes just a nod and a smile that spoke volumes. Over time, the mother realized how much she had come to rely on his calm, steady demeanor. He was patient, gentle, and unintrusive, yet his presence brought an unspoken reassurance that filled the space around them. Her daughter had grown attached to him almost immediately. She would tug at his hand, eager for him to join in games or read aloud from the small collection of books he had left in the barn. The rancher's deep voice brought the stories to life, each word landing softly on the child's imagination, and she laughed freely, her eyes shining with joy. It was a sound she hadn't heard in weeks, a reminder that life could still hold happiness even after loss and fear. One quiet evening, as snowflakes drifted lazily outside, they sat together by the fire. She held her daughter close, feeling the steady warmth of the rancher nearby. For a long moment, no one spoke. The barn was filled only with the crackling of fire and the soft breathing of a child at rest. Then, softly, the rancher spoke, "You don't have to leave when the storm passes. The barn, and I, are here for you." Her heart swelled with gratitude and something deeper. She had been cautious, wary of kindness from strangers, but now she understood the meaning behind his words. This wasn't just temporary shelter, it was a sanctuary, a chance for them to rebuild not only their lives but their trust in people, in the world. She glanced at her daughter, sleeping peacefully, and knew that they were safe, truly safe, for the first time in weeks. As the snow settled outside and the Montana night grew silent, she realized that this chapter of their lives was no longer defined by fear or uncertainty. It was defined by the quiet bond between three people who had come together unexpectedly. A mother, her daughter, and a man whose gentle strength had given them hope. In the stillness of the barn, with hay beneath them and the soft glow of lantern light, a new beginning had begun. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to imagine a future filled with warmth, trust, and the promise of days untroubled by storms, both inside and out.